All right. Welcome back, everybody. NAV Lab Podcast. Today, we have our guest, Josh Daniel. Josh, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, man. I'm stoked to be here.
So Josh is our lender here. So at NAV Real Estate, we have a mortgage JV, a mortgage joint venture, if you don't know what JV stands for. And we've been partnering for about a year now. You are our loan officer, owner of NAV Lending. So before we get into all of that, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, how you got to Colorado, and then how you got into lending.
Yeah, so I got into lending back in Cincinnati, Ohio. It was 2005. I was in retail sales. I was doing very well in retail sales. And my mom was is a real estate agent, and was at lunch with the vice president of a bank, and I had been complaining about retail hours, and he said, you should have him sit down and have a conversation with me. So I got recruited to work for a small savings and loan in Cincinnati, Ohio back in 2005. He kind of took me under his wing as his mentor, or as me as his mentor. Or no, wait, the other way around. Mentee. Yeah. And kind of went from there. Starting in 2005 was a really weird time to start in lending, because at that point in time we were giving loans to dead people. I remember I gave a loan to this guy. He had like a 525 credit score. The loan to value was 115%. We actually gave him money back at closing. And I went to my boss and I was like, dude, we can't keep doing this. This guy just missed his car payment and we're giving him a house. What the hell? And so I got the nickname Chicken Little, because I would run through the bank and everyone thought like the sky was falling. And I was just like, I can't do this. And the president of the bank, the owner of the bank, his name was Harry Yagi. He actually, cool fact, has the second largest car collection next to Jay Leno.
Okay.
Yeah. And Harry told me, he was like, Josh, we don't give a shit. We're selling these loans. Just do it at, sell as many loans as you can. And I was like, all right, fine. This is crazy. This is not going to keep going. And money was being printed. If you were in our industry, if you were a real estate agent or you were a lender, man, you were balling big. And as we all know, in 2008, that all came kind of crashing down. When it did, I had moved from a bank where I was making no money. I thought I was doing really well, but then I got approached at a real estate conference where they hand out like awards for. I was my mom's +1, and one of her very good friends came up to me and he's like, dude, how do you like making 50 basis points over at that bank? And I was like, Greg, what are you talking about? Well, I can make more than 50 basis points? And he's like, you're an idiot. He's like, come join me. Let me show you how to make real money. I'll triple your income overnight. And I was like, all right, dope. I'm down. 6 months later, the whole world imploded. Yeah. And before I knew it, I was selling TVs to try to make ends meet, because I went from making a lot of money to, I think in 2008, I made like $12,000.
Okay.
So pretty devastating, trauma center from going from like 200 at 25 years old to $12,000. So I kind of swore off the industry because I got a really bad taste in my mouth. Being from that, I was in Cincinnati, Ohio. A lot of friends that I knew lost their jobs, lost their homes. It was pretty traumatic. And I got kind of talked in 2013, got talked into getting back into the mortgage industry, because that's kind of like where the refi boom started to happen, and got back into the industry. And then, actually, no, I apologize. That was in 2011. And 2013, I got out of the industry again because I showed up to work one day. I remember Ben Bernanke had talked about quantitative easing, and I was actually on my way to EDC. And right before I left, we had this big meeting of 40 people, and they're like, hey, just so you guys know, we're changing your comp plans. There's no more draws. If you don't make it, you're too bad.
Explain quantitative easing to
So quantitative easing is basically when the Federal Reserve stops buying mortgage debt.
Yep.
So, now it's market dependent to buy those mortgage-backed securities. And so he talked about that. I want to say it was in like May of 2013. EDC was in June. And that was when it was really, really hot.
What's EDC?
Electric Daisy Carnival.
Oh,
it's
nice.
a huge, huge music festival.
I've been twice.
Yeah, I've been quite a few times. That was actually a pretty wild show too. We did this cross country trip where we did all the national parks, going to EDC. So I almost got ate by a bear in Kings Canyon, but that's besides the point. We got to EDC and had not seen any type of lights. It was my first time in Vegas. I get to Vegas and it was like information overload because I had just been out in nature with like me and my homie, and that was it. It was kind of like some Brokeback Mountain crap. And can I say that?
Sure. I want the world to know.
So anyway, we get back, and in August of 2013, the whole mortgage market had kind of changed. It shifted. We went from 40 people to, I remember, I went to the office. The door was closed. There was a sign on the door saying, "We no longer exist." And I had quite a bit of commissions that I was expecting to get that I did not get. And I'm like, wow. Shit, this is the second time mortgage is going to make me go broke. I'm done. I've had so much trauma. I'm out. So a friend of mine told me, he was like, hey man, you love people. You love to, bullshit. You should get into in-home sales. So that shifted to me selling windows and doors and bathrooms and stuff like that. And I absolutely loved that field. Just like walking into someone's house, the vulnerability of like getting to know someone instantly and like asking them to make a, $30,000-$40,000 transaction right then and there was it was a lot of fun.
This was in Ohio too?
No, this was in Ohio. Yeah. So in 2015, I had been, this whole time, I think I started coming out to Denver in 2010. I had a buddy of mine who had a house up in Leadville, and we would come out and go skiing. And I was in a relationship at the point in time. She had a child and couldn't leave Ohio. And I respected that, and I really wanted her, if I was going to make that move, I wanted her to be able to make that move because I was committed to that relationship. And then my family and friends had an intervention, and they're like, oh, you need to leave because she's crazy. So I ended up coming out here and working for Champion Windows and selling Champion Windows. So this is a long story about how I got back into the mortgage industry. I loved running mountain leads. No one else loved running mountain leads, but me have just been moved out here. I absolutely just love to drive up in the mountains. So I had made a sales call up in Breck, walked into this dope ass cabin and started talking to this guy, and he was like, hey, I need some windows replaced, and he had these really nice cherry hardwood like windows, and here I am selling this piece of shit vinyl window. So I told him, I was like, hey man, I have to sleep at night. I cannot sell you windows. And he's like, what do you mean you can't sell me windows? You're commission sales. Like, you just drove all this way, sell me windows. And I'm like, I'm sorry, Jim. I can't. But hey, while I'm up here, what do you do? You have this dope ass house up here in Breck. Like, tell me your secret so I can do this. And he's like, well, I run Fairway Independent Mortgage up here in Breckenridge. I was like, oh shit, nope, I'm out. And he's like, what do you mean? And so I told him my mortgage story, and he was taken back by it. It was like, I need you to come work for me. And I told him, I was like, Jim, I have PTSD, dude, from all this. Like, I've lost everything twice. I can't. So he recruited me for the better part of 6-7 months. And it became a time where we got a new sales manager who did not like me at all. He was cocky and I was cocky, and we just bashed heads. And one day he called me out on the sales floor, and everyone kind of like booed him because of like how he treated me. And I was just like, fuck you, dude, I'm out. So I called Jim, and kind of the rest was history. Started at Fairway Independent Mortgage, and then went from there to cross country to work with like one of my favorite mentors I've worked with, Gavin Ekstrom, who is like the top 0.5% in mortgage lending in the entire country. Learned the best from him, and because of my experience in '08 and in 2013, having that trauma, when COVID happened and I started seeing money being printed, I knew that there was a backside to this. And the whole time when I was doing that, something had kind of rang true with me. A very good friend of mine, her father is the #1 builder in Fort Collins. And we were up in his cabin in Steamboat. And he had said something to me to like, Josh, the way that you win in life is to always figure out how to make it a win-win situation for everyone. And this is kind of how NAV Lending was built. Is as I was watching what was going on in the market, I knew that the market was going to turn, and it was going to turn really hard. And it was going to be really hard for real estate agents and lenders to stay in the game. So I started looking at the mortgage game and said, like, how do I make this a win-win-win-win for like everyone? So the client wins, the real estate agent wins, and I win. And that's how the JV was born. I remember I was snowboarding with Matt in Keystone, and I was like, hey man, I got this crazy idea. No one's ever done it before. I've talked to some attorneys, and you guys, because the way that you're set up, I just totally resonate with you, and I want to be all your guys' best friends. I really appreciate you all. And that, I think, was in December, and by April, I think we had kind of ironed it all out and started like charging forward. And that's how we got to where we are here today.
Now you're running NAV Lending, and I think there was a lot there.
Sorry, I could go for hours.
No, you're good. So how's it going with NAV Lending? Were there any growing pains at first?
Oh my gosh.
How have you got past those things?
Every day has been a growing pain. Running a business. So let me just preface this as like, I've had management come to me for as long as I can remember and be like, Josh, we want you to be a trainer. We want you to be in management. And when I was in retail, like at 19, I was managing a jewelry store, and I've dabbled in management a little bit, but I've always hated it because I just love to sell. And if you would have told me I would have been an owner or a manager or anything 3 years ago, I would have told you were full of shit. There's just no way. I don't want the responsibility. So with running this company, it has been every day has been something that I've learned. And sometimes it's like, shit, that was so simple. Why did I not figure that out until right now? That's a really easy lesson I should have learned. And sometimes they're hard lessons. But the really cool thing that at least it's kept me on my toes is the evolution of, growing and where we're taking this. Just like IT issues, something that I've never dealt with. I remember when we started the company, I had an IT issue, and in my head I was like, shit, I should call IT. And then I'm like, oh,
you are IT.
I am IT. I've never been IT. Yeah. I've always had a problem solver other than the sales piece. That was me. Yep. So it's been really fun and challenging to wear a multitude of hats. The other thing that has really been fun for me is that it truly is our vision, and that we are at the helm of where we want this to go. Mm-hmm. And there's no one else that can screw that up but us. So as long as we get to hold each other accountable, it's, the sky's the limit. Yeah. I was having a conversation yesterday with Matt about a client event that we want to host, and some charity stuff that we want to do. And it kind of like warmed my heart, where we were talking about, we didn't have to, there was no argument there on anything of like where the money was going for the charity or anything. It was just like, yeah, let's do this. And I was like, yes, let's do that. And it's just really cool to have partners that are aligned with your vision and where you want things to go. So I often like lay in bed pondering, where are we going to be in 5 years? Where are we going to be in 10? And how are we going to impact the people who we serve? It makes this job so much more fun than I ever could imagine.
Yeah. And I was reading a book this morning, actually. I was listening to a book, and it was talking about or the way they described like you should run it's a real estate book, your brokerage is like from a place of integrity.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, well, that's 1,000% us, right?
Yeah.
Like the reason we created NAV Real Estate was so that we weren't going to be profitizing agents, right? So if you come here, you hang your license here, no one's making money off you, no one who owns the company. And I think based on what you said just now, right, it's like that resonated with you. So you were like, how do I partner with these guys? Because they're good people, right?
Absolutely.
And they run their business in a way that, and I think like, running the brokerage like that attracts like-minded people that are going to treat their clients in the same way, right?
Agreed.
Everything is done from a place of integrity where you're always being ethical, you're treating people fairly. Even when we work with other agents in the industry, we're coming from that place of honesty. And I think it's interesting, and I was thinking about this on how like the team has grown. Everyone that we've brought on has been a good person, has like had some character to them. I think people, that's something you can always develop as well. But what you said really resonates with that and with the people that, when you partnered, you surrounded yourself with, right? And, the agents on the team fuel your business for the most part. And I think that's why we've all really meshed with you, right? Is because that's been your focus. Cool. So as a lender, right, why would people want to work with Josh Daniel? Why would people want to work with NAV Lending?
That's a great question. And I think that kind of like ties back to why I came up with NAV Lending, is that I always, one thing that I run into very frequently as I'm having conversation with those clients, especially right now, where interest rates are high, but we see some movement on the horizon that interest rates are going to fall. And why I think people at least should have a discussion with me. I can't speak for why people should work for me. I feel like they're just going to make their own decision. But where integrity is very, very near and dear to my heart. And as I look at people's loan estimates that they're getting from other lenders right now, they are including discount points in their quotes. And right now, discount points just don't make sense, because on May 10th, when the CPI report comes out, we're expecting interest rates to fall. And right now, I'm trying to tell all clients that this is a temporary Band-Aid. This is not a long-term loan. We're going to keep you in this loan for 6 or 7 payments as interest rates fall. And then we can look at some long-term plan of you actually buying discount points. But right now, you want to keep your loan cost as low as possible, because by August, you're going to refinance. We're going to call you. We're going to tell you, hey, congratulations, interest rates are in 4.5% to 5%. You can buy your interest rate all the way down to the low 4s, sometimes in the 3s, depending on which loan category you fall into. So don't overspend now. So I think that's what really separates myself from everyone else in this industry, is that everyone else in the industry knows that the clients are rate sensitive. Matt and I, we were losing clients because they had a perception that our interest rates were higher than everyone else's. But what was really going on was that they were paying for their interest rate. Yeah. I was showing people what's called as close to a par interest rate as possible. So interest rates either pay you or they cost you. And I was getting you close to either a net zero, or they actually paid you a couple $100. And so, of course, my interest rate was higher because, most people are showing a 1 point, which is a 1% cost of the loan amount. And so Matt brought up a really good point. He's like, hey, why don't you just show the interest rate that you think that they should get, the interest rate that's close to what everybody else is doing, and then show them the lowest interest rate on the sheet. So we started doing that, and ironically, he was absolutely right. They were not looking at closing cost at all. Everyone was going to the lowest interest rate. And a lot of times that lowest interest rate cost people like $20,000, $30,000.
Yeah.
But that wasn't something that they were looking at. So, but it got us in the conversation because now people weren't thinking that. And, loan estimates are extremely difficult to read. I can't tell you how many real estate agents I've had conversations with where they've messed up reading a loan estimate. So to expect a client who's never done this before, or they've done this like once every 5 years, which is the average term of a mortgage, to understand what they're reading, it's just kind of unrealistic.
Yeah.
So, but just by pulling that experiment showed that people have absolutely no idea what they're reading. And the software that we use literally breaks it down what I call Big Bird Barney style. Like, you can't screw it up. It shows like the individual cost. It's not a normal loan estimate. We bought the software called Mortgage Coach, which is the industry leading software, and it's showing clients how that cost gets broken down.
Yeah.
But it still gets screwed up.
Yeah.
So
it's pretty crazy to me how you can even walk a client through it and show it to them. And, maybe they talk to me an hour later and they have no idea.
Yeah.
I have a buyer right now who, the husband was in my wedding, right? We went to college together. We've known each other for a long time, helping them buy a house. They have shopped around with 3 lenders, and they talked to a lender and they're like, man, we really like this guy. He's super on it. He's got the best rate. And this was at the time when rates were like 7.5%, right?
Yeah.
And they're like, yeah, he's given us 6.25, right? 6.125. And I'm like, okay, that's great. You're paying for that rate, yada yada. And they're like, no, we're not. And I'm like, it's literally impossible for you to have that rate and not be paying for it. And they argue with me about it. I'm like, okay, so I want you to text him or call him right now. We're together. And I want you to say these words. Hey, are we paying for this rate? And they did that. And he said no. Right? So I'm like, cool. This guy is a liar. And they were upset with me that I called this guy a liar. They liked this guy, right? And I was like, look, guys, I'm your friend. My goal is to get you in this house. I'm never going to lie to you. And this person is swindling you right now. And this went on for like 5 or 6 days. We'd have this conversation, right? So finally I'm like, hey, show me your estimate, right? Get their estimate. And I point it, I'm like, right there, $15,000 to buy this rate. And they're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, you're paying for this rate right here. It literally says it in their estimate, right? I think they were using the same mortgage coach, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen it before. And they were just blown away. They're like, this guy has sworn to us that we're not paying for this rate so many times. And I had already gave them the full spiel. Like, hey, if you shop, you should absolutely shop. But you should see what rate you're getting when you're not paying for the rate. And it just kind of blew my mind, but also blew their mind at the same time. But at the end of the day, it built a lot more trust between us. And they haven't talked to that lender since. That's for sure.
I bet.
Yeah. And it's just crazy. I saw emails where he said they weren't paying for that rate, and then you got the loan estimate, and there it was. And it's become almost like a standard part of my conversation with them. Like, hey, have you talked to a lender? Awesome. Are you going to shop around? You should talk to someone else or whatever. And then, okay, make sure that you're not paying for the rate you're getting, right? Because it seems like almost everyone is rate sensitive right now, until they kind of step back and they see that, okay, if we can refi, how much money are we going to save in the long run, right? Maybe I pay, an extra $200 a month for 6 months, right? And that's $1,200. Or I wait to refi, and now I'm going to save, thousands of dollars, right? Or I'm going to buy my rate down for $10,000. I'm only going to stay in this house for 5 years. Am I really going to save money?
Right.
Right. So I think a lot of people have a tough time taking a step back and looking at the actual cost for buying the loan down or for paying a little bit higher interest rate until interest rates fall and they're able to refinance. So it's really important to have someone like you who is honest and ethical and is going to walk them through that, so buyers can have a little bit better perspective on it. Awesome, man. So partnering with the team, any growing pains, anything like that? I know from like our perspective, right? We announced with the team we were partnering with you. We now have an in-house lender, right? We profit share, right? So NAV Real Estate is 50% owner in NAV Lending. With our profit share model, 50% of profits go into our profit share. So the agents that have given you the business, or given NAV Lending the business, are going to essentially make more money in their profit share because of it, right? So, we'd worked with you for a couple years before that. We knew you do a great job. So it was interesting to me when everyone wasn't just lined up at the door to give you business, because it was really a win-win for everyone. So you want to talk through just kind of some of those things?
Yeah. So I think they're, creating a relationship is, when I first came up with this, I was like, of course everyone's going to work with me because they're profiting. But ironically, it's not about money. It's about relationships. So what it did was solidify the relationships that I already had within the team, but I've still had to go and build those relationships individually with the new agents that I didn't work with before. Yeah. It's started some conversations. Some of the growing pains have been, we implemented, basically when we started the company, I went out and said, hey, what's the best software? What's the best CRM? What's the best this? What's the best that? And on top of running a company, being a loan officer, and trying to impact people's experience, we've also been learning all this stuff. So I would be a fool to tell you that we haven't tripped and we haven't made mistakes here or there, because they're not big mistakes. We've closed every loan that we were supposed to close, but there have definitely been growing pains that we have been figuring out. And that's the wonderful thing about this, is kind of the evolution of figuring all this out. But other than that, not really. I've loved everyone on this team. The synergy that the team has, everyone is just an absolutely wonderful human that I often spend time with outside of work. So it's like a big family. And that's one of the things. That's again one of the reasons why I wanted to work here, was because I felt that, the people who are here are just people that I absolutely resonate with.
Yeah, cool. Numbers wise, do you know how many loans you've done this year or anything like that? How many you have under contract right now?
Yeah. So numbers wise, we have right now about 10 under contract right now, which is way above industry standard right now. Most lenders are struggling to get like 2 or 3 loans.
Yeah.
And we have averaged, and I'd say about 4.5 loans a month.
Okay.
So this month is definitely the month that we're starting to take off.
Yeah.
But I also feel like those relationships that I've been building are also starting to come to fruition. So it's not just one-offs anymore. We're starting to get more and more loans as those relationships are getting more and more solid.
Yeah. Cool.
So,
and I think, you touched on something there. It's not about the money. It's about the relationships, which is something that I'll come back to. But one thing I wanted to mention is, so we partner with Zillow, right? And Zillow used to be pay to play. And we were paying $1,500 to $2,000 a lead. So someone on the team would claim 10 leads, right? Now they have a $15,000 spend or something like that that they would have to pay back. So, they need to close some of that business in order to pay off their spend, right? And we switched to Zillow Flex, which is no longer you're going to pay at closing for this lead, right? So the leads are free up front. And we looked at everyone's kind of like closing percentage, and it wasn't great, right? And I thought to myself, like, what could be more motivating than spending $15,000 on 10 leads, right? Like, it's the money, like it's a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
And so we were kind of taking a step back to see, like, okay, now we're performance managed for our leads, so we have to close at a certain percentage, but the leads are free. So it was kind of this like, is this a good thing, right? Like, because what could be more motivating for you to close at a good percentage,
right,
than the cost of these leads, right? So it kind of coming back to that is like, it's the Zillow relationship completely changed. Whereas like before it seemed like it was about the money, and they had 400 and some accounts here in Denver, and now they have 18 accounts, which we're one of, and now it feels like much more of a relationship because Zillow needs us to close a certain percentage for them to make money, but now it's a completely different relationship, which I think with agents and their clients has even changed too. I've been reading this book about recruiting and like team growth and things like that for real estate agents, or I just finished the book, and most agents when they're coming onto a team could care less about what you offer. It's kind of like the point of this book, right? What they care about is the relationship that they're going to build with the people around them, with their mentors, and they want to hit their own goals, and what you offer, the money they're going to make, doesn't really matter. And it's funny that like every aspect of this business comes down to relationships. It's not about money. It's not about anything else. And I think from my perspective as an agent, right, like my business has always been run about building a relationship and then keeping that relationship, right? And I think on the lending side too, right, if you help someone buy a house, you want to keep that relationship forever because they're going to refinance, they're going to buy another property, and they're going to tell their friends what a great job you did for them. So it's good to look at it that way of like, if you do keep the relationship, you're going to keep the business. But it needs to be important to everyone that relationships are good, right?
Yeah.
And I think going back to what you said about having integrity and working with people that you want to be around, that are good people and have the same vision, that want to help people, the only thing you can have is success, because you're going to build relationships, right?
I wholeheartedly believe that.
Yeah.
Do good and it'll all come back.
Yep. Cool. So outside of real estate, you were at Red Rocks last night?
I was.
Nice. Well, who was there?
The Marley Brothers.
The Marley Brothers. Cool. How was it?
Really fun.
Yeah? Was it cold?
It was super cold. 30 degrees.
30 degrees? Nice.
Yeah.
I went to, there's a North Face outlet in the Colorado Mills,
Mm-hmm.
and I bought the warmest coat they make, specifically for Red Rock shows. Because I was at Red Rocks last weekend, and it was like 20 degrees and snowing and windy, and I had on like 10 layers. I had on a big down jacket and then a snowboard jacket over that, and I was like, Oompa Loompa walking
old marshmallow
through.
walking around.
That's what I felt like. So I'm gonna get rid of some of those layers, and the coat definitely looks like a marshmallow, but it seems like it's gonna be pretty warm.
I found, depending on the show, if you just dance harder,
Yeah.
it's all that matters.
I'm getting old, man.
Just
Okay.
throw down that much harder. I remember Matt and Nick and I went to a show, I think it was like January or February, and they were all bundled up, and I just had a long sleeve t-shirt off because I'm just like going. And Matt just looked over at me and he's like, "You're an animal." And I had like sweat like dripping down my face. It was so cold, and I just kept going. So
Yeah, we're so blessed to have Red Rocks, but
yeah.
I have had some of the coldest moments of my life at Red Rocks.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Winter on the rocks they do in like
Icelandic.
Yeah, so just like January, February. Lasers and snow though, it's totally worth it. But hot hands, gloves, all that stuff.
Big Grismatic, man.
Lot of
I will
alcohol.
never forget. That's the greatest laser snow show I've ever seen. It was amazing.
So big gigantic
Grizz and Grammatic.
Yep. Who are all from Colorado.
Yep.
All EDM.
Yep.
EDM scene is huge here. Cool. So I know we recently did a deal together where it was tough.
Yes.
Do you think those tough deals are going away anytime soon?
I don't think tough deals go away at all.
Yeah.
Just because there's so many moving parts and what a client can do, what we can do. I think the real measure is how you handle the tough deals. Do you just throw in the towel? Like, for example, Landon and I have a deal right now that he can't get approved anywhere. And we're doing everything. And I've done all the research. I've called my colleagues and like, hey, can you do this? Can you do this? And it ended up finding a private bank that will lend that client money. And while it's absolutely a tough deal, we still got the deal done versus just throwing in the towel. And I think that's always been my differentiator. If you talk to some of my agents that I've been working with since I got back into the industry in 2016, I've got an agent who has me saved in her phone as White Knight, because after everyone turns all of her clients down, she's like, I can send them to Josh and Josh is going to find a way.
Cool.
So it's just, how do you handle those tough deals? Because, I've told people, don't go buy a car in the middle of a deal. And somehow dude, I got this dope Cadillac. It's only got an $800 payment. Bro, we worked on your credit for a year. And this is what you do? Well, now you don't qualify.
Yeah.
So, I had that happen, and I was like, hey, man, congratulations. You just bought a car for 30 days. Go take the damn thing back and sell it so you can buy a house.
Yeah.
So, just random stuff like that absolutely happens. And we make mistakes, right? Because we're human. And it's just trying to figure out how to navigate those and make it so, it's a win-win at the end. Most people don't remember the bumpy road. They remember the destination. And if the destination equals them into a home, that kind of is all that matters at the end of the day. As long as they understand that you had their best interest at heart and were able to fulfill what you wanted or what the end goal was.
Yeah, cool. So speaking of buyers that have maybe bad credit, have you heard, so there's a lot of talk in the real estate world right now about this new policy that it's going to be more expensive for buyers with good credit to buy homes versus buyers with bad credit, because they're going to be subsidizing the buyers that don't have such good credit.
So that's a yes and no. So I think what we're talking about is that Fannie and Freddie passed a rule that if you're in the certain medium income, so when we look at an interest rate, let's say that the going interest rate, hypothetically speaking, is 5%. Well, you have a credit score under 680. Well, now your credit score the interest rate went from 5% to 5.5%. Well, you're only putting 5% down. Well, now your interest rate just went from 5.5% to 5.75%. So what Fannie and Freddie have done is that they've eliminated, for anyone at the medium income or below, they've eliminated all those credit hits. So now if someone's in that medium credit, yes, it does kind of help them compared to the individual who has a 740 credit score, but really it just kind of like adds them on par. And I think it's a positive thing that it is happening in the market. Because individuals, especially here in Denver where we have a higher price point, the barrier of entry is just so much higher. And as the market changes, what the Federal Reserve is trying to do right now is dry up liquidity so that people stop buying shit.
Yeah.
So the way that they do that is credit starts to dry up. In fact, I was just watching something yesterday where right now credit that is given to corporations is the lowest it has been since 1950. Think about that.
Wow.
Yeah. So, things are changing to try to make things more affordable for the lower, the individuals who are having issues. But I don't think that's a bad thing. A bad thing is like when COVID happened and Chase Bank was like, hey, unless you have a 720 credit score, go pound salt. We're not giving you loans. Then we're in trouble. Because I find that most of the people that we encounter have credit scores somewhere between like a 680 to 700. And I think the more interesting thing that's actually happened with credit is at the beginning of April, Congress passed a rule. So there were a lot of these credit improvement companies. And what was happening was that you had to pay like $90 a month for them to send in some dumb letter to the credit bureau that like slowly improved your score. Beginning of January, Congress said, nope, not anymore. You guys have to prove yourself before the client pays. So now a lot of credit reporting company or credit improvement companies have to prove that they can do what they can do before the client starts to make those payments. I think that's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out, because those people are held to a higher account.
Okay, cool. So I think the thing that I had heard was that the people with better credit scores were going to be subsidizing the lower credit score people, those costs, right? Because those costs aren't actually going away. They're just not being charged to those people.
I would have to look into that. I don't. So,
I don't think they've passed it yet.
Okay.
Either, so it might be something.
There's been all kinds of crazy jumbo that's passed around. I know, like, there was a bank that said, hey, we'll do 100% financing, which doesn't really exist, at least in the way that they were talking about. You have your down payment assistance programs and stuff like that. But what a lot of people don't understand is that the way that down payment assistance programs work is that's where rich people park their money to get a return.
Yeah.
Because the way a down payment assistance program works is like, let's say the going interest rate 6%. Well, I've got $1 million and I want to increase my $1 million by 7%, and I want to do it super safe. Well, they've created the down payment assistance programs where, I give that money, I give someone an assistance to pay pretty much all their down payment. Some is even above and beyond their down payment. But my interest rate just went from like 6% to 8% or 7%. And then on top of that, you have to make your payment to that individual. So they hold the servicing, so they make money in the servicing. So it just kind of turns into this cash machine that's backed by real estate.
Yeah.
And it's really good for individuals that need to get into a home. But let's also be factual about what's going on here, is that it's kind of a better bet than putting your money in the stock market is to buy into a down payment assistance program.
Yeah.
So several different ways.
Cool. One thing you had touched on is like a lot of people who aren't of good character aren't going to make it, or those people aren't going to make it when things get tough, right?
Yeah.
And you were talking about how things were about to get tough or did get tough. So one thing I just found out is 10,000 agents in Colorado didn't renew their license this year.
Yes.
And I think we were at like 24,000 before that, so we're down to 14.
Yeah.
Theoretically, I haven't double checked these numbers. I've heard this from a couple different agents around Denver, though, and it's interesting because like we haven't lost anyone.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, I'd be interested to see how many LOs aren't in the business anymore, because really, I mean, things took a downturn for 6-8 months. Not downturn, but things got a lot slower. I know my business slowed down quite a bit there for a couple months, and I had to really like get back to the drawing board to get busy again. But I've had conversations with agents on, you know, they keep saying like, yeah, things are slow now, right? Like I've had such a tough time, and I'm just like, no, not really. Not for me, not for our team.
I think that's actually one of the amazing things at NAV, and part of me thinking I could create a recession-proof mortgage company was to be attached to you guys.
Yeah.
Because my agents that I work with that are outside of NAV, I tell them how many deals we have under contract, what you guys are doing, and they're like, how is this possible?
Yeah.
It's crickets outside. No one wants to buy. How are you guys cultivating business? And it comes down to that relationship with Zillow.
Yeah.
And I think what differentiates NAV from me working with what I would call outside agents, meaning that they're outside of Zillow, is that those agents are they're working on the individual who's going from Parker to Highlands, and they're a friend of a friend or something like that. On the lending side, I can tell you that over 90% of the clients that we get are not from Denver. They're moving here from somewhere. There's some major move happening. They don't know anyone. So it's a move that had to happen versus a lot of real estate agents that are not attached to Zillow. They're dealing with the natural moves that normally happen within a city. And unfortunately, what we have right now is, on top of the fact that interest rates are high, if you have a home at 2% interest rate, that's $700,000, and you want to upgrade to $1 million property at now 7%, well, your payment just more than doubled.
Yeah.
How much do you really need that home?
Not that much.
Not that
bad,
much.
Yeah.
I think you could probably test. This is why we've seen listings. You know, we have more inventory, but we have more inventory because of where interest rates are. And we don't have more inventory because everybody's in a rush to sell.
Yeah.
We don't have more inventory because we have a supply and demand issue. We have a inventory issue because there's an affordability issue.
Yeah.
You know, when we're just giving mortgages away and you can buy a $500,000 house for $200,000 or $2,000 a month, well, that makes sense. When you're trying to buy a $500,000 house and now your mortgage payment is $3,800, well, I might need to think twice about that. So I think that's, you know, what's differentiate NAV agents from outside agents is the ability to tap into a market where people have to buy and have to sell, because there's not a lot of that going on.
Yep. And so like I pulled this up, some numbers. It's very interesting what's happening in our market, right? So like week over week, our active units are down 0.2%, so really didn't change at all. But our median days on market is down 30% to 5 days. So the most common amount of time a listing is on the market,
5 days.
It's 5 days. So the market, you know, our inventory isn't necessarily changing in terms of how many homes are on the market. And there's 3,800 units, right? So we need about 38,000 units to have a balanced market. So we're still a very seller heavy market.
Right.
But there is definitely buyers are apprehensive, I would say, a lot of times to get into the market right now because there's so much fear and so much, interest rates are high and it sucks, right? And you could have bought an $800,000 house this time last year at the same price as you can buy a $450,000 house, right?
Right, but what was your buying experience then?
Hard.
Yeah,
right.
The buying experiences were completely different.
Yeah.
Then you were over ask, you were
waiving inspection, waiving appraisal.
You were giving away your first child to buy a home.
That was a joke we used a lot.
Yeah. That's not the buying experience now. Things have shifted. I believe that we're going to get back there, like as interest rates. For example, in January, we saw that the interest rates dipped and we got down into the high fives.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, we were multiple ask. We were in a competitive situation, and I was like, "What the hell is going on?"
Yeah.
And it was everyone flooded the market to come back. So, as I was talking about, when interest rates come back and down to May 10th, we're gonna be in that period where, oh my gosh, everyone's now coming back to the market.
Yeah. But hopefully, sellers now see that they can upgrade, or they've been waiting to move up, and we get some more listings. Yeah, I'll be honest. So I have 5 contracts right now, and they were all multiple offers. And one of them is a listing. And on my listing, I had 3 offers, and we're $22,000 above list price.
Damn. How many days were you on market?
3.
3?
3 days, yep. For a townhome in the 600s.
That's awesome.
In Broomfield. So not necessarily a hot place, but it was. And then 2 of those deals were a 1.4 and a 1.2, and all had 3 offers too. So it's interesting. I think it comes down to a lot about the price point. Anything between 4 and 600, super hot right now. Almost always going to have multiple offers. And then if it's a nice house, and this has been the thing for Denver for forever, right? It's like, if it's a really nice house in a desirable area, if you like it as a buyer, there's going to be someone else that likes it.
Right.
We're in a city with millions of people.
Right.
Cool, man. Well, I appreciate you coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
A lot of great insight.
Yeah.
If anyone's interested in buying a home, getting a loan, reach out to Josh. As he said, he'd love to talk with you about the process of buying a house and potentially help you to get into one. If you like the podcast, hit that like, hit that subscribe button. We'll see you in the next episode soon. Peace.